Welcome to Facts TV News, where everything is true. Policeman charged for alleged unlawful discharge of his firearm. Police Constable Adrian Johnson has been arrested and charged for assault and unlawful discharge of firearm in relation to an incident in Marrington, St. James in 2020. He was brought before the St. James Parish Court Wednesday following an investigation by the Independent Commission of Investigations Indicom and a ruling by the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. It was reported that on August 4, 2020, Constable Johnson, who was appellant on a motorcycle, discharged several rounds from his personal firearm at a moving vehicle and subsequently pointed the firearm at a crowd of people, threatening to shoot them. The presiding judge ordered the matter to be referred for mediation. Constable Johnson was offered bail in the sum of $300,000. A mention date was set for November 29, 2022. Preliminary bill for iron damage comes in at $360 million, says Prime Minister Holness. Early assessment for the passing of Tropical Storm Ian in Jamaica put the damage at approximately $360 million. That's according to Prime Minister Andrew Holness.
The very preliminary estimates to reopen roads and make surfaces drivable is $360 million. Preliminary, it might increase a little bit more, but thankfully, Madam Speaker, it is not in the billions. So the Minister of Finance is sitting very easy, very calm. The cost of permanent repairs are being assessed, and over the next 2 weeks, I will update Parliament as to what those would be. Certainly for the repair of retaining walls that have been destroyed, those costs might be a little bit more, but again, we're not expecting to see a $1 billion bill for repairs. Madam Speaker, several communities, especially within the parishes of St. Catherine and Clarendon, were impacted by the flood rains. There are reports of damaged roads to varying degrees, especially in low-lying areas. The NWA's initial assessment is that approximately 47 roads were badly affected by landslides, mud flows, down trees, or inundation, which rendered some communities inaccessible and some communities were marooned. But, Madam Speaker, as of now, as I've said, the floodwaters have receded and communities which were previously inaccessible would have now their access would have been restored.
Meanwhile, Mr. Holness condemned the actions of the individual who removed the lock at the gate barn entry to the Bagwork Gorge during the storm's passing. He says an investigation will be launched by the police.
This kind of behavior is reprehensible and should not be tolerated. License plates were identifiable from the camera footage. The police have been directed to do a thorough investigation, and the persons involved should face the full force of the law.
RGD resumes printing of free birth certificates. The Registrar General's Department, RGD, has resumed the printing of free birth certificates following the replenishment of its security paper stock. A week ago, the agency had to suspend the printing of the first free birth certificate and limited the maximum number of copies for which people could apply and pay. This, they said, was due to supply chain logistical challenges sparked by the COVID-19 pandemic, which affected the production and shipment of the security paper used to print the certificates. The suspension, which was supposed to end on September 30, came to a halt when the agency received its new shipment of paper on Tuesday, September 26. The RGD's Chief Executive Officer CEO, Charlton McFarlane, made the announcement. We have replenished our stock of security paper, and starting today, we will be resuming our standard service levels for customers, he said. Up to the time of arrival of the paper on Tuesday, we had paper left in our vault. We would have made projections for 2 weeks, and the paper we have had would have lasted for the suspension period, McFarlane added. The only real inconvenience was that they were not able to get the number of copies they needed at the time of application, he continued. McFarlane pointed out that while there were customers who were disappointed during the suspension period, the RGD was able to print and issue birth certificates with the paper that was in stock. The CEO said that RGD staff members were patient in explaining the challenges to its customers, adding that we would have put things in place to ensure that they don't end up spending more when they come back to apply for additional copies once it was linked to their original application during this week that the suspension was in effect. McFarlane pointed out that if a customer applied for 2 copies of a birth certificate during the suspension period, which would cost $4,000 for example, and was only allowed to pay for 1 copy at the cost of $2,500, they could visit the RGD and pay the additional $1,500 to get the second copy. He added that going forward, the agency has taken the decision to increase its buffer stock. We normally order stock on a yearly basis when we do the standard contract, and we order an amount that is a function of what we expect our demand to be, plus a buffer for overflow. Now we are adding more to our buffer stock, the CEO stated. Building owners swap fire safety for physical security, says Jamaica Fire Brigade. Assistant Commissioner for the Jamaica Fire Brigade, Sean Martin, says many building owners swap fire safety for physical security. Martin says up to 2019, before the new Building Act, the Fire Brigade could only dissuade this practice through general persuasion.
So, and the reality is, the probability of your building being broken into is probably a more real probability than you having a fire in your building. And probably that would have been the reason why persons would have spent a lot on the security of their building. And sometimes the very security itself compromises the safety of the building.
Yeah.
Over the years, in terms, the Jamaica Fire Brigade have conducted inspections on a number of specified buildings and would have made a recommendation as to how to make this building more fire safe. Now, up until 2019, when I have the new building bill, which gave the Jamaica Fire Brigade certain authority and certain powers, most times you find that then what you try to use is gentle persuasion, so to speak, but most persons would place more emphasis on security rather than safety. The new building bill would have given the Jamaica Fire Brigade greater authority and autonomy, and a lot of things would have changed in the building industry since.
Okay.
Because since the passage of this bill, what it would actually mean. So, for example, if you're building a new building now, before you're able to occupy that building, then you must be issued with that occupancy certificate from the Jamaica Fire Brigade.
Okay.
And that occupancy certificate is saying that your building is built according to the provisional approval that you were given by the municipal corporation.
Loopholes close with crucial amendments to firearm law. The Upper House plunged a hole in the highly touted Firearms Prevention and Restriction Act on Friday when Opposition Senator Donald Scott Mosley pointed out the provision in the proposed law that may have opened the door for a criminal to hand in his illegal gun and apply for a license to become a legal carrier of the weapon. Leader of the opposition Mark Golding on Tuesday told his parliamentary colleagues that the amendmented amnesty provision was very important because, as originally passed in the lower house, it created a loophole. Rising to debate 17th Senate amendment to the Act, Golding said that someone who has the possession of an illegal firearm could simply hand it in during the amnesty and was entitled to apply for a license for it. Clause 19 of the bill that was passed by the lower house gives the Minister of National Security the power to declare a gun amnesty by order subject to affirmative resolution in Parliament. Persons who turn in illegal firearms during the amnesty would not be subjected to prosecution. Subsection 3 of Clause 19 said that a person who surrenders a firearm or ammunition in compliance with an order made under this section may, if the firearm or ammunition is of a type in respect of which a firearm authorization, be granted to apply for the appropriate firearm authorization. In an interview, Scott Mosley said that the absurdity of the provision struck me because the government thrust has been to improve mandatory life imprisonment for the possession of an illegal firearm. An attorney at law, Scott Mosley, argued that the irony of the flawless provision was that many upstanding citizens had a challenge getting a firearm license. I was preparing for my presentation in the Senate on Friday, so Thursday night I was going back through the bill because I have been on the Joint Selected Committee, but I was just making sure that I had the points that I wanted to raise highlighted, she said. That a criminal could get a license for a firearm because they took advantage of the amnesty was simply mind-blowing, the opposition senator stated. She said that acting leader of the government, business in the Senate, Matissa Moda, spoke to the technical term and the provision was removed. Another significant Senate amendment to the law was made to Clause 5 to correct an abnormality in a sentencing provision related to simple possession of an illegal firearm versus possession with intent to injure. Describing it as important, Golden said that there was an abnormality in the simple sentence possession of its illegal firearm was being made subject to a more onerous punishment than possession with intent to injure. As tabled, the bill referred mandatory life imprisonment for illegal possession of a firearm. The amendment now results in a sentence of not less than 15 years and no more than 25 years. Mandatory life imprisonment for possession was a very extreme form of sentence at the time, and this brings in more into alignment with the rest of the scheme in the legislation, said Golden, who welcomed the amendment by the upper house. This is a very fundamental change because, as we know, one of the most common charges under the Firearm Act is illegal possession of a firearm. From the data of the cases coming into the gun court, a large percentage of them are simple possession. Somebody finds an illegal gun and you are charged for it. That was going to attract a mandatory life sentence, and it will no longer attract that, the opposition leader said. Please remember to subscribe, like, share, and click the notification bell.